Hey everybody, welcome into another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Collar here once again in Orlando, Florida at the owners' meetings. And joining me from Orange and Blue today, they cover the Denver Broncos, Andrew Mason and Cecil Lammey. Cecil, you have the coolest hair in Orlando, I think, hands down. And so, you know, I see everybody going up to you looking for autographs, thinking that you may have played drums for Rush. But instead, I'm just kidding, man.
I'm no Neil Peart.
No, nobody actually is. No, but I'm just kidding around with you. But I've been on your show a bunch of times, so now you're on my show. Glad to have you. I think we can start out in a really obvious place, guys, with defensive tackles. No, I'm just kidding. Does seem to be a good defensive tackle class, but quarterback is obviously the place. I want to know from you guys, we'll start with you, Cecil, just what is the discussion like in Denver surrounding the quarterback position as we go into this month between now and the draft, where everybody's going to have Adam Schefter notifications on, waiting to find out who's trading up and what's going to happen. So what has that discussion been like for you guys?
Yeah, when Mason and I jumped on the road this January to go to the Shrine game, one of the first things that we heard is like, hey, I think the Broncos are going to be very aggressive in moving up. And here we sit on March, whatever it is, Mace, like, now we're at the owners' meetings, and now the rest of the league is like, hey, everybody, Denver's going to be aggressive and move up. So, yeah, I believe that's the case. It's something Mason and I talk about every day, and it's like, all right, find the guy, go get your guy. Whoever that guy is for Sean Payton, once he falls in love, I think he'll have the resources come hell or high water to get his guy.
Okay, Andrew, how much can the Broncos give up? Because the Vikings, I think, knowing that the Broncos want also quarterback, went out and traded for the 23rd pick. But how much? Let's see. You've traded picks for Sean Payton, Russell Wilson, any other wash-ups from other teams that maybe they've traded for. How much seriously, though, how much of a package can they put together for someone like New England or Arizona?
Well, if you want something that involves a robust package in this year's draft, that's where they're going to obviously come up short to the Minnesota Vikings. They would be willing to give up stuff in future years. Like, I think if Sean Payton fell in love and the package involved first-round picks in 2025 and 2026, I think he'd do it. Sean Payton, not at the quarterback position, but at other positions in New Orleans, very willing to sacrifice future draft capital to move up and get a prospect that he loves. It's just amplified now because of the quarterback position. But that's one of the things you kind of hear around here is that, okay, if Sean Payton really wants a player, he's going to try to move heaven and earth to make that player happen. I think Jeff Duncan of New Orleans said he's either going to get that player or he's going to die trying if he's fallen in love. And that's the sort of variable you have to watch out for. The other thing is also they do not want to trade Pat Surtain at cornerback, the two-time Pro Bowler. But if they're in love with a quarterback prospect and it took Surtain to move up and get that deal done, I think they would very reluctantly and painfully include him in a trade. But that's not something they want to do.
Well, that's what I was thinking is, like, who's got a card they can play that would make New England or Arizona say, okay, all right. Because when you think about New England's position, they obviously need a quarterback. And if you're Arizona and Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, or whoever you like, if it's Malik Neighbors, I mean, you want to pick your guy if you're those teams. So someone's got to wow you. And I think the Vikings getting this additional first-round pick, that wows you a little more. And I think the argument that Kevin O'Connell is trying to make is, hey, there's some good defensive players too. Wink, wink. Don't you want those? Gerard Mayo, like over in New England. How much should they give up, though? I mean, because we've been having this discussion about the Vikings where you're like, all right, if it's J.J. McCarthy, do you really want to give up 2 first-round draft picks and then add another first-round draft pick on top of it? Is it only worth it for the top 3 quarterbacks, in your opinion, having watched them? Or do you think that J.J. McCarthy would be worth going up to number 4 if it took that much for Denver?
Okay, Mace, don't roll your eyes, but it's all about fit. In the NFL, the dirty little secret is...
We all rolled our eyes.
Okay.
I'm just going to go to him for this take.
Right. But the thing is, like, if that's Sean Payton's guy, go get the guy. I do not have a first-round grade on J.J. McCarthy, but I fully realize he could be a top 5 pick if someone thinks he's the right fit. And there's plenty of things to like about McCarthy. I really like his personality. I like the fact that he's a winner and his accuracy and the fact that he can make full-field reads. So he's out of my top 4. He's number 5 for me. Not only me, but Dane Brugler from The Athletic, who I consider the greatest draft analyst there is. He's got a second-round grade on McCarthy. But it's just about fit. Who's their guy? Find their guy, get their guy, and then we'll see who that is for Sean Payton. It makes sense to have a smart, accurate kid like a McCarthy out there kind of dealing in his offense. And it's one of the reasons why things fell apart with Russell Wilson, because Russ can still play. He just can't play for Sean because Sean wants a very specific type of follow my lead, I'll set you up, and maybe that kid is McCarthy.
So when I was at the Combine, every person I ran into, I was like, how do you feel about McCarthyism? Because everybody had a different take. Every person. Now, you and I are seeing kind of the same thing, is where I have been more skeptical of him as a prospect. And even when you see a NFL Network report, like he could go number 2 overall, you're like, wait a minute, is this really happening? I don't know about that, because we've been fooled before. But are you more of a McCarthy believer? Is it worth it to get him for Denver?
I think it's worth it to get him if they've identified that he is the guy that can run Sean Payton's offense effectively. He's going to need a significant runway to be ready. Like, I don't think you're plugging J.J. McCarthy in week 1 of his rookie season and saying we're going to sink or swim. I think that would probably do some damage to him. I would even say that with Drake May as well. I think these are quarterbacks that they are at a stage in their development where sitting on that bench for a month or even up to a season might be the best thing for them, whereas someone like Bo Nix has a lower ceiling but is closer to the finished product. If you bring in Bo Nix, if the Broncos ultimately draft Bo Nix, I think there's a very good chance Bo Nix is starting week 1.
So you mentioned that McCarthy is your QB5? Mm-hmm. All right, so what's your order then?
Yeah, the order is Jaden Daniels, number 1. Very controversial. Me and Doug Farrar have Jaden as the number 1 quarterback. Caleb's generational talent, of course, but I like that. Lamar Jackson. He comes into the league as Lamar Jackson level with Jaden Daniels. Then Caleb. Then Drake May. Surprised Mace didn't go on about Drake May. That's his guy. He loves him. And there's a lot to love with May there as well. Bo Nix is 4th. Bo Nix has first-round tools. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. And, they need to change some practice structures. Jim Nagy, if you're out there watching, change some of your practice structures, please. Have structured and ordered practices, because now at the Senior Bowl, it's just assistants who don't know how they're running practice. So I don't think it did Bo Nix any favors down there, but he's been a first rounder for 2 years. I'm not going to knock him out for the hot guy, which is now McCarthy. And again, McCarthy, we saw him at the Combine throwing like, some of his stuff on the outside takes a little longer to get there because his arm isn't a rocket. You don't need a rocket to succeed in this league. But again, it's all about fit. Find your right guy.
You and I are on the Drake May page. We got, so here's how I look at it, is Kevin O'Connell with a guy who has great touch on his deep ball. I just feel like it's a match made in heaven. Justin Jefferson, this is something the Vikings can provide that Denver cannot. As good as Cortland Sutton is not Justin Jefferson. So the weapons that they can give him, and I also think that O'Connell would love a development prospect to mold, which might also work for J.J. McCarthy. But, you're not a big Bo Nix guy. What I'm fascinated by this class is that you can make your case pretty strong for so many guys. Like even Michael Penix, like, hey, if you show me his ACLs and his shoulder surgeries are okay, look at that arm. Like, it's a really good arm. And with Bo Nix, that's a weird one for me because I feel like it's been all over the map with his draft stock, where going into the year is like, oh, well, he's one of the guys to watch. And then he comes out and throws 45 touchdowns, gets sacked 6 times, throws 3 interceptions, like incredible numbers, not turning the ball over. And also the former quarterbacks seem to love him. Like Kurt Warner watches him, or Chris Sims, or whoever. And does their opinion mean a lot more than anybody else's at the end of the day? Like a little to me, because I think that they can see things that maybe I'm not as good at seeing. At the same time, when you talk about that ceiling, you go, well, but is there good enough tools there to be great? I think that's my big question on Bo Nix, because the Vikings might end up sticking at 11 and 23, and they might end up with someone like Bo Nix.
Yeah, and the thing is with Drake May, when he's throwing that 35-yard out, it's a thing of beauty, right? Like that's the thing, and that's the club in his bag that JJ doesn't have, and that Bo Nix really doesn't have, and that's going to stress a defense. Whereas with Bo Nix, he's going for for 85% of what is required, he's going to be on rhythm and on point. He's going to lead his receivers. He's going to set up yardage after the catch. And again, that may have a real appeal for what Sean Payton wants to do schematically, but that other 15%, and we even saw it like toward the end with Drew Brees in New Orleans, that he could be on point, and yet they lacked that vertical strike element, and it really made things a bit easier defensively. So that's, I think that's the thing you ask with Bo Nix, because we're not talking about somebody who's got a howitzer even coming into the league, and generally speaking, you don't develop a cannon getting to the NFL if you don't have one coming into the NFL. So and I think that's why, by and large, you're going to see Bo Nix be the 5th quarterback off the board, is based on the arm talent argument.
There's a little bit of like a faster Andy Dalton to Bo Nix to me, where, look, Andy Dalton won a lot of games when he was under the right circumstances and had A.J. Green and so forth, but was he ever going to take you to some level that where when things went wrong, he could make it right? And that's my thing with Drake May, and also the way the Vikings have talked, they kind of keep coming back to that. That would also be Jaden Daniels. It's also Caleb Williams. When it's just, for example, 4th and 8 in a playoff game, and the guard gets beat, you need your quarterback not to check down. Vikings fans know what I'm talking about. Maybe you guys don't. But that was a Kirk Cousins thing in the playoffs against the Giants. They were facing 4th and 8, season on the line. He checks down to the tight end, season over, because he can't run away, can't make a play, can't make it right. And I think that's what the Vikings would really like. Now, what you guys got any intel here on what's going on at the top of this draft with these teams? Because what I can't figure out is why New England would give the Vikings their pick when they could pick Drake May. They could pick Jaden Daniels, right? Or if the world shocks us and it's not Caleb Williams, it'll be Caleb Williams at number 1. Yeah, it's Caleb Williams for sure. But do you think that they are actually willing to do it? They're putting up neon signs. They're saying we're open. They're saying we're listening. Or are we going to be getting to, you guys are doing your live podcast, I'm doing my live podcast on draft night, and we're going to be getting to, all right, we're at pick 10. Here it comes, Vikings and then Broncos, and here's the quarterbacks coming off the board. Do you think the Giants and McCarthy stuff is real? Like what? Like sort through me what you think is real based on your guys' discussions.
He's got some Giant stuff. So Mace, you get to the Giant stuff from today in the owners' meetings. I'll tell you what I know about New England. They love Jaden Daniels. This is what I've heard. And I heard it in January, so I usually like information then. Information in March, and certainly April is the month of lies. But the information that I'll run with is like, okay, they're focused on Jaden Daniels, and, well, so is Washington. Adam Peters loves him. So if Washington takes Jaden Daniels, they're going to take Jaden Daniels. Then New England will be open to trading back because they like Michael Penix, perhaps trading back at the end of the first round, doing a Teddy Bridgewater thing, right? Doing a Lamar Jackson thing. And Penix can spin it. My God, can that guy spin it. Beautiful. Ugly delivery, but beautiful where he can place it and how he gets it. They're just so fast with that howitzer. So, some things to like about Penix there. That's what New England could be focused on, and that's why they're open for business. Potentially, once they figure out, y'all ain't getting Jaden Daniels, who you like.
Big month for howitzers, by the way, who is like this is the month of lies and us calling arms howitzers. What's the Giants' intel?
I would just say that Brian Daboll was kind of clamming up whenever the subject of pro days and who they're interested in arose at his media availability this morning. So I got the distinct sense they were very much in the quarterback conversation and very much in the J.J. McCarthy conversation, even though, they have Daniel Jones. They even brought in Drew Lock, who's going to start until Daniel Jones is ready. But then if you throw a rookie in who the heck knows, right? But it's really wild that we're sitting here talking about the Giants in the quarterback market a year after they gave Daniel Jones that contract, which is like, all of us said, what were you thinking when you're giving Daniel Jones that deal? And here we are in March of 2024, and they're going on the pro day circuit, and they're spending time with JJ, right? It's life moves pretty fast. Right,
Well,
as
look,
they say.
Daniel Jones owes the Minnesota Vikings half of that contract because he played them twice at the end of that year, and he had his 2 best games, basically, and then they paid him. And also, Kirk Cousins, I think, owes Daniel Jones because when it came to their negotiations, I think that he was like, I'm not being paid less than that guy, no matter what. And that just took everybody's number up. So it's funny about, it's like the whatever 7 degrees or the butterfly effect of Daniel Jones. That'll be my next book, is the butterfly effect of Daniel Jones. But even leading us to the point of they might end up drafting J.J. McCarthy. So let's end on this. Would you guys prefer to see the Denver Broncos try to get above the New York Giants to get J.J. McCarthy? If you couldn't get your hands on Drake May, couldn't get your hands on Jaden Daniels, but it was only for McCarthy, or would you prefer to wait? Because this is, of course, a debate we're having at the same time. So as you're arguing for Denver, you're arguing for the Vikings case as well. Which would you prefer, stick and pick or to move up for McCarthy?
Luck favors the bold. I mean, what did Kansas City give up to move 16 spots for Pat Mahomes? Nobody remembers. What did Josh Allen, what did the Bills give up to move up 5 spots for Josh Allen? Nobody knows. Nobody cares. Find your guy, get your guy.
And your take?
Well, fortune favors the bold unless you're George Payton trading for Russell Wilson 2 years ago. So it doesn't always work that way. Everyone remembers that the Broncos gave up 2 years of first-round picks, second-round picks, Noah Fant, Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, to get Russell Wilson. So that being said, if you've identified the quarterback and you have a conviction, that's a term I usually come back to, a conviction on that quarterback, you do it. The vision is the Sean Payton word. Like he likes to talk about what the vision is for a player. If you ask him about the vision of any player, he'll give you like a long response. Like it just tees him up. He loves talking about that. And if he's got a vision for J.J. McCarthy, I think they move up and do it. And that's why the 4 spot for Arizona is so interesting. And it was a spot that Sean Payton brought up yesterday at his press conference. It's good to be Monty, as in Austin Fort, the Cardinals general manager. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes I think Payton said a little bit too much yesterday. I don't know if he was smoke screening. Let's put it that way. I think some are like, oh, it's a smoke screen. But also, when he started talking about J.J. McCarthy, it was, 1 minute into answering a question that you asked, and then he started talking about, we worked out J.J. the day after his pro day. Like, so it was Sean Payton kind of in full riff mode. I'm not sure that George Payton, the general manager, wanted that little bit of information out there, but it is, and it's what everyone's talking about now.
Well, no disrespect to George Payton, a former Viking executive, but I think the Sean Payton is the guy pulling the strings there, I would guess. So let's end on this, though. What's your favorite Viking-Bronco matchup moment? I mean, I know mine, but if you guys want to bring this up, you can. I'll just throw mine out there, is Randy Moss flipping it to Mo Williams is obviously, I think, number one. But they've had their little scuffles throughout the years.
Yes, this is from my buddy Nick Ferguson, who's out there. Like, yeah, that play, I will say maybe a non-Broncos moment, but I'll say the Minnesota Miracle, because that got Case Keenum to Denver by his book, everybody, with the longest title ever. But I'm like, so why is there this Minnesota-Denver connection with quarterbacks, right? The battle for Kirk Cousins, and then Sam Darnold this offseason, and now May or McCarthy with the Broncos and the Vikings. Like, I don't know, but I still blame y'all, and I blame Minnesota. It was that rookie safety for New Orleans that misses the tackle, and the Minnesota Miracle happens, and then Case Keenum's playing in Denver. Buy his book.
Very expensive, Case Keenum, for that, 1 year that didn't work out. Also, Teddy Bridgewater, who is... Would you say Denver's best quarterback since Peyton Manning is actually Teddy Bridgewater?
It's either Teddy or, believe it or not, Russell Wilson this past season. Although, of course, obviously Wilson was not a fit for Sean Payton. Teddy had a good, solid year in 2021, and I think there were elements of the Broncos fan base that did not embrace him because they wanted Drew Lock to be the quarterback. Teddy was objectively better than Drew Lock, more accurate, made fewer mistakes. But to go back to your original thing, Viking Bronco memories. Okay. Well, you have to talk about the Tim Tebow game in 2011. There was a lot there. Number one, that was the game where the late Demaryius Thomas really started to break out. Now, this is why I always say DT was not a product of Peyton Manning, because he emerged in the back half of that season, starting with that Viking game. And I'll tell a real quick story. Rod Smith, great wide receiver for the Broncos, talked to the receivers in that room that week, and they were all down because nobody's getting the ball because Tebow is, can't really throw. And Rod says to all of them, look, you've got to focus on maximizing what you can. Don't complain. Just focus on, okay, if I'm getting 2 targets, I'm going to make these the best I can. I'm going to be the best blocker I can. And they all took it to heart, especially Demaryius. And so the first half of that game, Broncos, they're trying to move. They can't do anything. And so at halftime, Mike McCoy, Adam Gase, John Fox, they basically say, okay, screw it. They're expecting Tebow to run. We're going to cross them up. We're going to come out in an I formation. We're going to throw over the top, and we're going to give Demaryius a look. And Demaryius exploded in that second half. But another precursor to the Super Bowl 48, Percy Harvin had a big game that day. Yeah. And Percy Harvin, when they got to Super Bowl 48, I'm like, he was a problem when the Broncos went to the Metrodome. He's going to be a problem in the Super Bowl. He was. The other great Bronco Viking memory that I have is 2015. Yep. Vikings come to Denver. Vikings, they win a division title that year. Have a chance for a comeback at the end. It was one of the great moments for that no-fly zone defense that carried the Broncos that year. TJ Ward on a safety blitz, strip sack, fumble. Bridgewater loses it. Broncos recover, end up win the game. That was one of the signature moments, I thought, of that regular season, a very special regular season for the Broncos. A season that should have ended a lot better for the Vikings, but I don't really want to relive past painful memories for you.
Well, there's hardly any to talk about with Vikings fans and their painful memories, but that was also the Stephon Diggs breakout game. That was like the first game where it might have been even his first game active, and he, I think, roasted Aqib Talib a couple of times, and everybody went, who is this 5th-round draft pick? And obviously he's turned out to be one of the best receivers in the league. What is your guys' YouTube channel? Because I'm thinking that Vikings fans might want to just at least peek in on what is being said in Denver. So where can they find you?
Yeah, Denver Sports. Just search Orange Blue Today, Cecil, Lammey, and Andrew Mason, and we're on sometimes twice a day, but usually at 4 p.m. Mountain Time in the Forgotten Time Zone. But just check out youtube.com/Denver Sports and Orange Blue Today. We appreciate y'all.
I have no idea what time it is right now in Mountain Time. No idea. No clue. I don't want to know. I don't even want to know. It's not. It is an unrecognized time zone. Cecil and Andrew, great stuff. Great to meet you guys here in Orlando, and we'll maybe talk again after the draft and we know the results. We'll see what happens. Thanks, everybody. Football.